Welcome to the story behind the glory by On3. Today we have the pleasure of chatting with Kerry Harbor, the head strength and conditioning coach for Winston-Salem State University.
It's a beautiful day here in the bustling metropolis of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So it's a beautiful day. A little cloudy, but weather's good. I think we'll get up to about the 70s today. So it's going to be a nice day here.
Well, much different than here where we're expecting, anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of snow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a little different here. We don't really get many 70-degree days in February here in North Carolina. So it's rare. It's rare. It's rare.
now, are you born and raised North Carolina?
So I actually grew up here. I actually grew up here in Winston-Salem. So I'm actually from city of Winston-Salem. I grew up here, played high school football here, graduated from high school. And then I attended North Carolina Central University, which is in Durham, North Carolina. I guess about an hour and a half away where Duke University is. Actually, North Carolina Central University's football team this year beat Jackson State and won the, Black College national championship. And the head coach at North Carolina Central, he actually played with me at Central. So I'm actually from Winston-Salem, but as a college coach, you just move around so much that I think this is my third or fourth time moving back home. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yep.
And, when you look back on your high school days, was there a coach that had a particular, influence on you or a certain, moment when something was said that you're like, wow, that left an impression on me?
So my high school, he was my offensive line coach. And then the last year, he was the head coach, Keith Wilkes. And even when I was a freshman, things are a little bit different then. Now you kind of have just one coach, but we had freshmen, or JV coaches and varsity coaches. So he was the varsity offensive line coach. So I guess I did pretty well my freshman year. And so the plan was for me at the end of the year, if they made the playoffs, for me to play varsity football. So I actually started kind of working with the varsity team and the head coach at the time. I think Coach Bovender had weightlifting class. And so toward the end of the year, he was like, all right, you're going to come lift weights with us. And once we get to the playoffs, you're going to play varsity, which is now is a pretty common practice to pull the younger guys up that you feel like is going to help you, that you feel like it's going to be able to help you next year. And I guess they kind of identified me as one of those guys. And so Coach Wilkes was my position coach for most of my high school career. So I played varsity my last 3 years. So he was my position coach. And then my senior year, he was the head coach. Actually, me and some of the guys went and talked to the principal. And, when Coach Bovender retired, we actually asked, who's going to be the head coach? And we said we felt like Coach Wilkes was the best person for the job. So throughout my travels with the college coaches, and I do know some professional coaches, he's probably, when you look at it top to bottom, as far as being a coach, being a mentor, being a role model, probably the best coach that I ever had, seen, worked with in my life. And that's the reason why I'm a coach. But not just Coach Wilkes, but our athletic director, who was also the head basketball coach. We had so many coaches at my school who were just great role models, and I felt like that was my path. My goal initially was to be a high school teacher and football coach. That was my goal. And it was because of Coach Wilkes and Coach Bovender and Coach Poe and Coach Wynn. It's a bunch of coaches that poured a lot of themselves into me along my journey. That's why I felt like I thought that was the best job in the world, being a high school coach and being a teacher.
And what were some of those, do you remember any of those teachable moments or disciplines that he, really instilled upon you as a freshman through senior year?
One of the things that I just talked to the guys here today, he always says it's hard, but it's fair. And, I've kind of lived my life that way. It's hard. Life is hard, but it's fair. You usually get what you work for, not what you wish for. And I think some of the other things that I've learned were just being able to persevere, deal with difficult things, being able to multitask, Um, Football then is a lot different than football now. I can remember not being able to take your helmet off. I can remember all the things now that we know you probably shouldn't do. I can remember not taking your helmet off, drinking 1 to 2 cups of water during practice. The first time I was in college, my college position coach just laid me out one day because I kept asking him if I could get water. And he was like, if you don't get water, I'm not going to use the words he used, but he was like, if you don't get water and leave me alone so I can coach the rest of these guys. And I told him, I was like, in high school, you couldn't get water. You had that. You basically had 2 opportunities to get water, and then you usually got 1 cup, and that was it. Like I said, these are all things now that we know are detrimental to not just football players, but to any sport. But, that's kind of how it was. And, it wasn't a lot of griping, it wasn't a lot of complaining. There was a physical and mental toughness to it. And I think that has helped me, not just as a coach, it's helped me as a parent, it's helped me as a leader, mentor, role model, but just being able to physically and mentally deal with certain things without complaining or without kind of going into crisis mode.
And how was that when you were called up to play on varsity for the first time with seniors and juniors with maybe bigger bodies, different maturities? Did they embrace you, or was there some growing pains, being low on the totem pole per se?
So what I always tell people is my high school, it was actually like a football like powerhouse. And when you go back, it was a historically black high school before integration. And, it's known throughout the state, I don't know, maybe even nationally, as being a football powerhouse. And so what wound up happening is you kind of had to prove yourself at the JV level. And once they could figure out that you could play, then you were kind of embraced. And we got a long lineage of guys that, have played in the NFL, went on to have great college careers. And the difference now with, and I'm not taking shots at the new high school athletes, but it was more of a brotherhood and fellowship, because if you were a young guy coming down the pipe and you could play, the older guys knew who you were. And by the time you were out there and you were playing, if you proved yourself and you could, withstand the practices and the conditioning and everything else, those guys knew who you were. And it was more of a situation where, they want to win, but they also are going to hold you to whatever that expectation level and standard is. So you're going to be held to that standard. And I can remember, I'm not sure what grade I was in. We had a defensive lineman. He actually is working in the NFL. His first round draft pick. He was like, all right, you're coming down to the track and you're going to run with me today. And there was no like, nah. It was like, he wasn't asking me, he was telling me. And so that's what it meant to be. And I went to Carver High School here in Winston-Salem, but that's what it meant to be the Yellow Jacket. That's, we always talk about jacket pride and what it means to be a member of that program and to understand the expectation level and standard. And so if you could prove yourself, and that just didn't mean in football practice, but that was in the weight room, that was, in the school, it was just a different expectation level. And where in a lot of situations, some people within the school may be influencing you to do the wrong things or maybe get caught up in things you probably shouldn't. It was usually one of those older guys that would tell you, no, that's not the way we do it. And yeah, that may be for them, but that's not for you. And so not only did I have great coaches, but I had great mentors who are now great friends, but it was about, that legacy that we built and that championship attitude and that championship mentality, putting on that uniform, putting on that helmet, it meant something. So I was actually embraced, but there was a standard. There was an expectation level. And if you couldn't, I don't know, hack it, cut the mustard, then there would be no embrace. There wouldn't be no, now they wouldn't completely abandon you, but the expectation level, if you're going to put that helmet on, if you're going to start on varsity, you're going to play on varsity, it was a little different. It was a little different.
It almost sounds like there was a little legacy to uphold, given, your school's, prowess, right? And
yes,
standard.
yes. So And at that point and at that time, when we would kind of had things rolling at the school, it was, when you played everybody, it's kind of like you had a target on your back. You kind of got the best game from everybody, and everybody, expected you to, when you're a dominant football program and you're that dominant, everybody is expecting, they're expecting a good game. They're looking forward to that competition. They're looking forward to seeing, am I one of the best teams? Am I one of the best players? And when we had all city, county, all conference voting, usually most of the time it was a lot of us on there. So, like I said, that expectation level, that standard, well, it's something that we all took pride in upholding. We took pride in that.
I'm curious. You played at North Carolina Central, right?
Yes, sir.
And if I recall, your coach was, an NFL legend, Larry Little, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Can you talk to me about Larry's personality and what he brought to the team and as a coach?
So I tell people I was pretty fortunate. I'm lucky, blessed, however you want to put it, because I felt like I had. Oh, I just told you about Coach Wilkes, probably one of the best high school coaches. You can check statistics and records. Probably one of the best high school coaches in the country. And then after that, I went to college, and Coach Little actually was not the coach that recruited me, but I think he got the job. So I'm not sure exactly when, but sometime before I started in school. And so, I mean, I don't know. It's very few people that can say they played. Well, it's very few people that can actually say, I know someone that's in the NFL Hall of Fame. And then there are even fewer people that can say I actually played for a Hall of Fame coach. And so Coach Little, again, he was my head coach, but since he played offensive line, he also did a lot of work with the offensive linemen. And after my freshman year, he switched my number to his number. So I actually wore his number in college my last 3 years. So when I got to college as a freshman, I started that whole year. And then my second year, he switched my number to his. And so that's kind of like, I don't know, that's like the coach, you are bestowed, or I don't know how you put it, you've been knighted. But like when you are on his team and you wear that number, again, you kind of got a target on your back. Or the minute that you get to a game, the minute that you show up anywhere, everybody's like, oh, okay, so that's number 66. And even to this day, some of the guys that I played against in college, some of my college coaches, colleagues, that's one of my claims to fame. He played for Larry Little, and he wore Larry Little's number in college. And that's something that I don't take lightly. When I look back over my athletic and coaching career, that may be my biggest honor. For him to say that you're going to wear my number, because I didn't have a choice. It's like, you're wearing my number. And again, that comes with huge expectations, not just as a player, but as a leader in your conduct off the field and in workouts and when you're running. And for your teammates, they're my teammates to this day, and they know me as a number 66. And Coach always made a point to, again, talk about your physical and mental toughness. Coach Little is an old school coach. He is all about being tough, all about being hard nosed. But I will say this, that, he was a guy, and Coach Wilkes was the same. They were guys that you knew they loved you. You knew they loved you. But also at that same time, as a captain, team captain in high school, team captain in college, it's a little bit different. They expect for you to be the guy. They expect for you to, uphold a tradition. They expect for you to be up front, present, finish the drill first. If they need a volunteer to do something, so there is a high expectation level. But pressure means people expect something from you, or they expect certain things for you. And so I've never been one to run away from the pressure, where some people, man, that's Coach Little's. That's a lot of pressure. Not sure. I was with it because I felt like I got a 50-50 shot. I got either I'm gonna do real well and it's gonna go real well, or I'm gonna fall flat on my face. I feel like if I got a 50-50 shot, those are pretty good odds for me. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it.
I like it. And you're very big on leadership, and I heard a little bit about your leadership as a coach, certainly as a player, being captain. Can you talk to me, about leadership and what it means to you? Both from the player perspective as the captain, and now as a coach, instilling values.
So the best definition I ever heard of a leader is a dealer in hope. So basically, as a leader, what you do is you're offering hope. And sometimes you have to offer hope when the situation may be very bleak. And a lot of times I tell my athletes is at some point you're going to be a leader of something. For a lot of you, you're going to be a leader of your family. And when you're a leader, you got, number one, you got to lead by example. So the same things that you expect from the people that are following you, you must exhibit those traits yourself. But the biggest thing is you got to offer hope and try to be as positive as you can. If you can offer hope and be positive, I think those are probably the two most important things about being a leader: offering hope and being positive. Sometimes, and I'll tell the athletes here, there's some things that you just can't quit or you can't run away from. And the one thing about being a leader is if you're going to be out front and you're going to be, the first person through the door, or person who breaks it down, or the person who gets to speak to the media, it's an awesome responsibility. But again, that pressure is something that you should look forward to. Some people don't want to take the last shot. Some people hope they don't throw the ball my way. I hope they don't run the ball behind me. Those high pressure situations in golf. Some people run from that. But I think true leaders and people who are trying to inspire others, you look forward to it. Because even if you fail and you work as hard as you can say, I failed, but at least I put forth my best effort. I think part of being a leader is, the last part is you kind of got to be fearless. You can't be afraid. Like I said, those little, he didn't ask me if I wanted to wear his number. He's like, I'm changing your number. That was it. End of discussion. The head coach at North Carolina A&T that just retired, Coach Washington, I can still remember the first day we did, it was Oklahoma drills, which have been outlawed. And he came up, I think he hit me on the helmet. He said, Coach, look, that's your number 66 right there. So even from my freshman year, and I think this is the first live contact drill we did, I didn't even know what it meant. And later on, I knew and I understood what it meant. And I understood that awesome responsibility. But again, I didn't shy away from that leadership role. And I think it's something now that we got to encourage kids, help them learn how to lead, and then also learn how to follow. And when I talk to my athletes here, one thing I tell them is being a leader is great, but you have an opportunity to be a leader every day. And they're kind of looking, what does that mean, Coach? You get a chance to lead yourself. You get a chance to lead yourself in the right direction, get up, go to class, work hard at practice, in the weight room, a community service event. You are a leader of yourself. And then hopefully when you get a chance to be out front and be a leader of a team or a group or organization, you're used to leading yourself in the right direction. Because when you lead, you also got to have people that follow. And learning how to lead yourself also helps you learn how to follow direction from a leader, whether that be someone that's placed in that role or whether it's someone that's, just a natural leader.
And can you think back to a time, when man, there was very little hope, and you had to just, you had to see the positive? Is there a moment that sticks out?
So so both of my sisters passed away from cancer. So my oldest sister, I think she passed away about 10 years ago. And then my youngest sister, it's been 13 years. And I can remember almost like yesterday, certain situations where everybody just kind of fell apart. And there are times, and I don't know, hopefully you never have to deal with it, when you have to talk to a doctor or a social worker or I don't know, maybe someone that's dealing with the treatment plan or a nurse, and they don't give you a positive outcome. There comes a point with just about every cancer patient, whether either they're going to say, hey, we got it, you're in remission, things are going well, or they sit down and tell you, yeah, it's really nothing else we can do. And I can remember a couple of those days with my sister, and it's kind of like, I guess I was the person that, you had to step up and lead. My mother being a nurse, she passed away last December. And so when you work in the medical field, you kind of know when someone is not doing well. I was at work at UNC Chapel Hill. I can remember like yesterday, she called me. My mom called me and she said, hey, I need to talk to you. And I stepped outside and she said, I don't feel like your sister's getting better. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, I'm listening to the doctors, but I just don't feel like she's getting better. And that's that, whether it be from her training as a nurse or just her being a parent, she could tell that my sister wasn't getting better. And so some of those days, I can remember her doctor, she just kind of, yes, she had a rough day and she just got real emotional and started crying and she was real upset. And part of the, I guess, hospital procedure and protocol is your bedside manner can't change because it upsets the patients and it upsets their family. And kind of everybody was upset except for me. Well, I wasn't outwardly upset. On the inside, I was upset, but that's a situation where you must lead. And even though the outcome, it was pretty bleak, the prognosis wasn't good, you still got to lead and you got to be positive because I think my dad passed away. She said, he just never cries. He never gets upset. He's talking about me. And I told her, somebody must keep their composure. That's what a leader does. A leader must lead in tough situations. And even when everyone else is kind of, falling apart or being emotional, a leader must keep their composure. And you'll read about different generals and presidents and people in high leadership roles that when they're alone or they're with, maybe their inner circle, they kind of let their guard down and then it hits them. And so for me, I really didn't have an inner circle. It was just kind of me. And there are days now that, I think about my sister, I think about my mom every day. And I would be lying if I said every day was a good day. But part of being a leader is I look at the positive. I look at all of the different things that they did for me, the life that they led. My sister she was the, I'm gonna get her title wrong, but she worked for the governor of the state of North Carolina. So she was like a celebrity. Well, I guess she's a celebrity, but always people would ask like, "Oh, that's your brother. He's a football player. He's a strength coach. He blah blah blah." But I told her she was a superstar. She was tall. She was good looking. Got a great smile, great personality. And I make people laugh. I said she got the brains and good looks and great personality. I could just play football. And so people would laugh, but that's who she was. And when you look at some of the things she did and things she was able to accomplish within her short life, that was tough. The next thing was losing my mom. And when I lost my mom, it was just me. And as she had dementia. And as the dementia started to take hold, it was about the same time that I was entering my role as a single dad. And so what I told people is there were a lot of situations where I was her father and her son. And I guess I looked like my dad because she thought I was my dad too. So on some days I'd be her son, I'd be her dad, then I'd be her husband all on the same day. But that's another situation where you got to be positive because at that point she was actually staying with me and the kids. And my children, because they were so young, they didn't really understand what was going on with grandma. And she is the person, she's the reason why I'm probably as tough and demanding as I am. And most people think it's because of my dad. I'm not taking a shot at my dad, but my mom was the first Black student here in the city to win the spelling bee. So she is famous for being the first Black student here in the city to win the spelling bee. Very smart, very articulate, very charismatic, which I think that's where my sister and me got it from. But her family just didn't have a lot of money. So if she had the opportunity, um, I'm thinking, definitely someone with a PhD, lawyer, doctor. Um, she was that smart. She was gifted with this natural intelligence. And I tell people the reason why I did well in school, um, way before I ever knew I could play football, and I was a good student, it was because of my mom. She was a great student. She took pride, and her and my dad took pride in not only doing well in school, being well behaved, following directions, doing all the little things that are going to help you be successful every day. And so going through that situation with my mom, that was tough because I never thought I'd be at that point and then have to do it all by myself. And at the same time, being a single dad, raising my kids. So, but the lessons that I learned playing high school football and playing college football, it helped me. Being able to get up early, functioning with just a little bit of sleep, being able to multitask, being able to basically lead. I got a chance to practice before I was ever put in that role, um, where the stakes were really high. Not saying that losing a football game or, you know, not graduating, not saying that the stakes are high, but it's completely different when you're responsible for someone else's life and welfare. And, when you have family members and you're the, I guess, bell cow to operation, you got to make life and death decisions, about, you know, people's, what's gonna happen with the rest of their life. And for my mom and my sister, my father passed away. He's been dead about 20 years ago. He died about 20 years ago. He passed away. They came to visit me when I was at the University of Illinois, and he had a heart attack while he was there. And similar situation. It was actually at a parking lot, and the sheriff's deputy, at the time I can remember, he's like, "Well, why don't you step over here? They're doing CPR and trying to defibrillate him." And I was like, "No, I'm just gonna stand here." And he came to visit me at my house, and we actually became friends because he was used to people in that situation, just people completely losing it. I didn't want my mom and my sister to see that because those are images that wake you up at night. Like you wake up at night. Like I wake up at night with those images in my head. Those are things you never forget. And I didn't want them to have to carry that burden the rest of their life.
Well, that's very selfless, and yeah, I love that you look for the good, right? And that's an effort. That's a choice. My grandfather had dementia as well, and you can choose to remember that stage, or you can choose to look back at all of the wonderful memories.
So me and my mom, we had a lot of good days. I told people we were kind of like roommates. So initially it was when I moved back from Delaware, we were staying together, and I was kind of in transition with my divorce, and she was staying in the house when we lived in Delaware. And so when I moved back, and I told people we were kind of like roommates. And then over time, after my sister passed away, I noticed certain things that, you know, things just didn't seem right. And then once we started living together, I knew before anyone else that her memory was starting to fade. And because her memory was starting to fade, I think there are certain things that I did where I probably I couldn't say over-parented because I wasn't her parent, but I probably overcorrected because I knew what was going on. And the one thing I would always do is I would choose to look at the bright side. And even on a day when she was being difficult, my little trick was she liked desserts and sweets. And so we'd be having a rough moment, and usually I just kind of leave her alone for a little while, and then I come back later with a dessert. And no matter what kind of mood she was in or what kind of day she was having, she didn't immediately snap out of it. And her comment, my mom's, I'm a big guy. My mom was, I don't know, 5'3". She probably weighed 100 pounds. But she would always say, "Well, I guess you're trying to make me fat." That was her joke. I said, well, if you don't want it, I'm just going to take it away. No, 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 no. But I knew that for her, that brought her back to a good place. And my grandmother, her mom, was a great cook. She liked to bake. And so desserts, even though they kind of had a tough upbringing, desserts always were a happy time. And so I could bring her back from whatever point she was in, with something sweet to eat. And when I go visit her at the assisted living facility, they would say, well, Coach, your mom always eats the dessert. I say, well, she's always going to do that. She doesn't eat anything else. She's going to eat the dessert. And so when we would have a rough day or have a bad day, a lot of times I would laugh or smile, and she'd be upset, but I'd be laughing and smiling. And it wasn't so much I'm laughing and smiling at the situation. I'm thinking about something good, thinking about a good day from my childhood, or just a good day that me and her had. So we had some rough days, but we had a whole lot more good than bad.
I like that. I love that. And, clearly you've got a real heart for helping others, whether it's clear from your family members to your athletes. It sounds like that's just a real, passion, that you have.
Well, what I tell somebody is, you are, you're placed in certain situations, because that's where you're supposed to be. You can make plans, but God decides your purpose. And I feel like this is my purpose. At one point, I thought that I was going to be a physical therapist until I figured out that you had to have like a 3.9 or 3.8 to be a physical therapy candidate. And I always did well in school. I did well in college, made the dean's list, but my grades weren't that good because, like I said, I played football and I played a lot, and I wouldn't change that for anything. But I knew that this was what I was supposed to do. And my junior year in college, I found out that I had shoulder surgery, and they said that the bone, the joint is damaged beyond repair. We need to replace it. But that again, that goes back to that physical and mental toughness. I think my shoulder had been hurting since I was in the 9th grade. But that's one of the things you never did. You just kind of you performed when you needed to perform, and when you're in that leadership role, people are counting. And so that's what I did. But as I guess got through my career, it just got worse and worse and worse. And eventually I had to have surgery. And I can remember my athletic trainer in college, I'm under sedation, and, they got the screen up, and she walked around and she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, did you hear what the doctor said? It's loud, it's noisy. She's like, I don't think you're going to be able to play football anymore. And I kind of heard it, but I was like, oh, okay. So I'm under sedation. And then when they woke me up, it was actually my mom's expression. When she walked in, I think maybe when my grandmother passed away, I saw that expression. But I never saw her make an expression like that. And I was like, man. And she said, she leaned over, she said, do you remember what the doctor said? I said, no, what did she say? She said, you're not going to be able to play football anymore. And she said, I think, I'm just worried about what's going to happen with you after this, with your life and your arm. And that situation kind of put me back into coaching, because up until then, I was, maybe going to be a physical therapist. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. But because I was on full scholarship, Coach Little told me, he was like, hey, you're going to coach football this spring. I was like, okay. He's like, you're on full scholarship. Back then it was, it's kind of like, you got to do something to be, a contribution to the team or contribute to the team. So it was coaching. And so that first spring, I had a whistle, and I told somebody, like, it's kind of like Frosty the Snowman. He was just a regular snowman until he put the hat on. Once he put on the hat, that's when the magic happened. I put the whistle on, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, I was unsure, not really sure which way my life was going to go, but I put the whistle on, and that was it. And the rest is history. I haven't looked back. And that was one of those situations where I knew this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But it all came about because it looked like one part of my journey was ending, and I was going to start another. Well, I actually wound up playing my senior year and finishing out my career at an all-star game against the advice of my athletic trainer and doctors and parents. But that put me back on my coaching journey, and being able to work for Coach Little and being his offensive line coach again. That's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of expectation for a 22-year-old student fresh out of college. And so being able to learn from him and learn what to do and what not to do helped me a lot. And my first college position coach, Coach Pettyjohn, taught me a lot about the fundamentals and mechanics. He moved on to another job, and my second position coach, Coach Price, taught me a lot about, being a dad, being a good leader. And he actually was the coach that I worked with, but he had some health issues my first year. And so there'd be a lot of days where he would be too sick to coach. And so I was the O-line coach. So I had to kind of figure it out on the fly. In that spring, he passed away. And so I then ascended into the role of the O-line coach, even though I kind of been doing it up until that point. But Coach Price, he would come in, he'd bring his kids in, and he'd say, he had a real deep voice, say hello to your brother. Like, did you speak to your brother? And they say, hey, Kerry, hey, Kerry. That's what he called me. He called me his son. And I think Coach, I want to say he was in his 40s. He was a young guy, but had some health issues, but again, gave us what he had every day, poured all of himself into us. He graduated from North Carolina Central, proud Eagle, proud alum, was a high school coach in the area. And when my first offensive line coach left, he actually took his role. So again, that's just the little twists and turns and different things that life takes. And that kind of got me back into coaching.
And, I've heard you say, you got to light your own fire as a coach. Like, you got to step up into that O-line position. Tell me more about that, saying that you use, what you mean by it.
Light your own fire. So what I tell people is, coaching is a passion. I apologize. I got a little allergies going on. Coaching is intensity is necessary for any great accomplishment. And what I mean by lighting your fire is, it goes back to what I was talking about being a leader and offering hope. To give somebody else hope, you have to have hope yourself. And before you can give energy or ask somebody else to be outgoing, you got to do that yourself. And so lighting your own fire, what that basically means is you got to find a way to get your own self going. And I'm big on talking to students and athletes about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. The most successful people are usually intrinsically motivated. The extrinsically motivated people, they can be successful, but a lot of times they're waiting on somebody else to kind of get them going. And when you're in difficult situations and you're talking to a doctor, about, my father or my sister or my mother, those are situations where you're it's you, and you got to make certain decisions, and you got to figure out a way to be positive. And there may be other people around to help you and support you, but in the end, that's something that's got to come from inside of you. And I always, I joke with my children, and I tell them, like, nobody's, in my bedroom in the morning clapping for me when I get up at 4 or 5. There's nobody saying, hey, come on, Dad, come on, Kerry, come on, Coach, high-fiving me as I brush my teeth and groggily walk to the shower. There's nobody doing it. A lot of times when I get here at work in the morning, it's just me, or it's being a janitor. And those are times where you must rely on yourself to get motivated, because you can very easily find 10 different reasons. Oh, it's early, it's cold, I'm sleepy, I'm hungry. But figuring out a way to look at the positive and look at the bright side, it helps you. And nobody ever injured their eyesight looking on the bright side. It's always I'm a glass half full person. There's always something positive. And even if something bad happens, there's a lesson to be learned. So lighting your own fire, that's kind of what that means. Being able to find something inside of yourself to get motivated, or look at a Bible verse, or, I don't know, watch a motivational video, or remember something that, your parents have taught you, or a friend, and then be able to draw on that experience and then light your fire. You know, I told people to be able to do this for almost 30 years is a blessing. You know, I get to come to work and I got a polo shirt on today. All the kids were trying to figure out what's going on because usually I got on a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. And so I got a polo shirt on today. So all of football players this morning, they're trying to figure out what's going on. If I got on polos or slacks, or I'm dressed a little bit different, they're trying to figure out what's going on. But again, that comes from them like, wait a minute, what's coach doing today? What's he got going on? But then after a few seconds, they notice I'm my normal self. I'm making a joke about them or about myself. I like making jokes about myself. I'm probably one of the most imitated people here on campus, but you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery. I usually try to lead with something positive or, you know, give people a smile. Well, when I'm coaching, I don't smile a lot. And, you know, it seems like I'm barking at people, but I just talk real loud and I'm really animated. But being able to light your own fire, that's what it means. It means being able to not depend on somebody else to get you going, be motivated, or energy drink, or, you know, that's something that comes from inside you. And I think the truly great people in any profession, they can do that. Even if it's a bad situation, even if it's a bad situation.
You know, and I think that ties into the whole idea of, you know, failure, right? And how you look at failure, right? Is it really failure or is it an opportunity to have learned something new, right? And I got to imagine that, you know, whether you're coaching at the college level or even more so maybe at the high school level, you know, that's pretty important, right? To that whole concept of, you know, light your own fire, you know, be your own leader.
So my mom, she used to tell me, you may have failed, but you're not a failure. And I think she got it from probably a verse in the Bible and probably from my grandmother. You may have failed, but you're not a failure. And so when I do a presentation, I always talk to people about teaching student athletes how to fail, or just regular students, teaching them how to fail and letting them know that it's okay to fail. But then when they fail, give them the support and the resources that they need to get back up off of the ground or gather themselves and, you know, take on that challenge again. Failure is necessary for growth. And one thing I tell people is I know how to fail. I've perfected that art. When it comes to failing, you know, I figured that out, whether it be in athletics or, you know, with my professional career, I figured out how to fail. But the one thing that I've tried to do as I failed is keep that positive outlook and then understand that, you know, that it doesn't define you. It's just a failure. You know, it's just one moment in time. That doesn't mean just because I'm having a bad day, it doesn't mean that I'm having a bad life. And when I talk to people about, you know, my sister and my parents and, you know, even just being a single dad, you know, I try to get the point across to them is, you know, failure is okay. It's okay to have tough days. It's okay to have, you know, those moments where we're unsure about what the outcome is going to be. And it's even okay for sometimes for you to, you know, kind of go to that negative place. But the thing of it is you can't stay there. And I think a lot of times some of the mental health issues that people face is because they fail or their fear of failure. And I guess, I don't know, maybe I didn't learn that. Or my mom would always say the biggest gift that she gave me and my sister was allowing us to fail, you know, letting us fail within guardrails or letting us fail with boundaries. Not completely just letting you hit rock bottom, but letting you, you know, you need to, your toe needs to tap the bottom, you know, you need to scrape the bottom a little bit. You're not going to hit the bottom all the way, but you do need to get there because rock bottom teaches you lessons that the mountaintop never would. And there's certain things that you learn by failing that you would never learn by being successful. And so I embrace failure. I think it's important for my children to see me fail. I think it's important for my athletes to see me fail. Because a lot of times we put this protective hedge around us because we don't want people to see us in those vulnerable positions and situations. So I want people to see me fail. It was good. It's good. It's good for the whatever star captain of the football team, head strength, blah, blah, blah. It's good for him teacher of the year. It's good for people to see them fail, because what that shows them is, well, you know what, if he can fail and reach where he's been, and I can fail and I'll be okay too. But a lot of times, when you're in certain roles, you don't want people to see you fail. So I've tried to have a healthy relationship with failure.
I hear you. Sometimes, even with all the successes, it's the overcoming and the learning from those really, really awful moments at that moment in time that you end up remembering years later.
Like I said, I've learned more from failure than I learned from anything else. Like and I think and I understand what my mom and my dad were doing when they would put us in those situations to fail or allow us to fail. Is the biggest thing I think they were teaching us is to be resilient, to understand that failure is part of life. I don't know anybody that always wins at everything or is successful in every endeavor. It's healthy. I think failure is healthy. But the thing that we can do for student athletes in my setting is teach them to fail in a safe setting. Help them fail with guardrails. Because if they fail in the outside world, if they fail with a credit card, or they fail when they're driving, or they fail to make a good decision in their personal life, those have serious consequences. Teaching them to fail in my setting, in my environment, helps them understand that, it's okay. And then now I'm going to give you the tools that you need to be successful. So we're doing change of direction work today. And of course, it's a little damp, so people are slipping and sliding. And so I'm coaching them about, foot positioning, weight distribution, and how to keep them slipping so that when they go and they actually try to do it on their own, they'll have the tools that they need to be successful. But failure, it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's all right. It's all right.
I like it. I like it. And, did you have a preference over, high school versus college coaching?
I think I really don't. To me, coaching is coaching, and you'd be surprised that some of the same discipline issues that you deal with at high school, you still deal with them at college, because they're not that far removed from high school. And a lot of them, they don't really get it until maybe their junior or senior year of college. So there are a lot of similarities. It's a lot more simple. Now they're bigger and stronger and taller and faster and whatever, but a lot of the things are the same. So I think, if you're a coach, you're a coach. I've never coached anything below high school, but I do have 2 children. And so I was a parent to 2 small children. And some of the same things that I have to tell them, I have to tell my college athletes. And so being a parent, being a coach, for me, I don't really have a preference. I've worked with people who turned out to be professional athletes, but I've never worked at a professional level. But I think high school and college is a setting for me, just because you have more of an impact. You have a chance to mold them and help them understand what they need to do to be a successful adult. And I really don't have a preference. I enjoyed my time at both. Both have different challenges, both have different benefits, both have different issues, but I guess I really don't have a preference, because it was kind of the same for me.
And when you think about those, athletes that you coached who went on to being a professional, boy, the NFL will find you, right? If you've got the talent, whether you're D3 or D1. Is there an athlete that, that you coach that stands out and really, was it all about talent, or was it also about the mindset or a combination thereof that, that you're like, all right, this guy's, at the elite level?
So I've been lucky enough. I think I worked with every collegiate sport except for water polo. So I think just about every sport that I've worked with, I've either worked with someone that went on to be a professional, or they competed in the Olympics. They competed at the high level. So that part, I've been fortunate and I've been blessed. But usually what I tell people is there are certain differences that you can notice. They're different from everyone else. They're a little bit more focused. They're a little bit more detail oriented. Obviously, they have certain physical attributes. but usually their approach to everything is different. Um, and the funny part is a lot of athletes and parents, they'll ask you, well, coach, what about my kid? And I always tell them, and if an athlete asks me, nah, I don't want to do that because I don't want to put that expectation level on you if you don't make it. I also don't want to tell you that you can't, because if you can do certain things, if you can listen and follow directions, you got just as much an opportunity as everyone else. But you can identify and you can look at certain things, and there's certain things about them that stand out that are different from everyone else. Um, just like people that go on to be successes in doctor, in the medical field as a doctor, as a lawyer, it was something different about them. And you could see at whatever point you had them, whatever point they were in their life, it was just something different. Um, and I always tell people, it just happened that they wound up to play professional athletics, but I could see them being successful in just about everything that they do. One of my former students is a strength coach at Furman University, and she said she knew after she took my class in high school that she wanted to be a strength coach. I told her husband that she was different. She was a little bit more focused. She was a little bit more detail oriented. And it didn't matter if she was a strength coach or a car salesman or a doctor or a nurse. I could tell she was going to be successful. So the professional athletes, it's just something different. They got a different outlook. They usually work a little bit harder than everybody else. They got a little different mindset. They have a little bit more natural leadership traits. But then there are some that go on to play professional and they don't have any of that. And they just have the physical makeup, or they're genetically blessed to be able to do it. But I always look at the people who are in school and who are working toward whatever their goal with a little bit more passion and a little bit more desire than everybody else. And you can see and you can tell that it's something different. And you hope that the other people will emulate that, and you hope that the other people will see that and see the success that they're having and view them in that leadership role, and then kind of take on some of those qualities themselves.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, as we wrap up here, Kerry, do you have any questions for me?
I don't. I think this is a great platform. Most of the time, as a coach, we're kind of one-dimensional. People see us with a whistle. People see us, I don't know, on the court or whatever. They don't really get a chance to understand, I guess, the full story about why you're a coach and what helped you become a coach. I always ask my students here at college and in high schools, anybody want to be a coach? Anybody want to be a teacher? And most people, that they're running from it. And I always tell them, it's a great job. I think it's a great job. I think it's a great career. And my next line is, well, who's going to teach and coach your children? Because at some point I'm going to retire and I'm going to need new coaches. We need new people, new blood in the profession to kind of carry on the legacy and to carry on the torch. So I think this is great because people get to understand your why. When people get to understand, and I made it a point when I was at the high school, not so much here because my kids are older, but I let them see me be a parent. They had to see me parent my kids. They got to see me change a diaper or take somebody to the bathroom or have to correct one of my children for not following directions. I felt like that was something that was needed to help them see that I'm not just the person with a whistle. It drives my children nuts. It drives my children nuts when we go out to eat or we're in a grocery store and I see a former student and oh, here he goes. As soon as they hear the coach, I see their heads drop and they're like, Dad, you know somebody everywhere. But I told them that's part of living a life where you're making an impact on others. And I don't always remember their names. Sometimes I remember their face. I may not even have been their teacher or coach, but they remember you. And that's about living a life where you make an impact on others and you're having influence. And so I think situations like this where people get to understand why, that I wanted to be a coach in high school, that my coaches helped me, or those different difficult situations that I've had with my family that have kind of helped shape me and mold me as a coach. I think this is important. This is an important platform because this is information that people need. They just see that guy or me barking at somebody or blowing my whistle or high-fiving somebody that runs off the field, and we're kind of like this one-dimensional person. But getting to know who we are and knowing a little bit about us, I think that's helpful. Because a lot of times when we are working or we're coaching, you don't get a chance to kind of peel those different layers back to explain to people who you are and why you do what you do, or your attitude. Your attitude about why is Coach Harper hyper at 5:30 in the morning. My early morning sports are like, oh, here he goes. And as soon as they walk in the door and they see me, oh, here it is. But that's me. But knowing why, I'm an intrinsically motivated person, and why in some of those situations it was just me and I had to rely on myself, that's important. If they knew that, they're like, oh, okay, well, I see why. I see why he's hyper. I see why he's energetic. I see why he's always trying to look at something positive. Because when you have enough bad stuff happen to you, you will be forced to find the positive. Whether you want to find it or not, you're gonna find it. Enough bad stuff happens, you'll be like, okay. You'll be searching for positives everywhere. You'll be out looking for 4-leaf clovers and pennies with the heads up, all those different things. You'll be out looking for. Well, what I tell a lot of people is some people see the glory, but they really don't know the story. They just see the outcome. They don't get to see all the behind the scenes work and all of the like I tell people, part of being a strength coach is a lot of what people see is us on game day. If it's a football game, we're out there with a polo shirt on and sunglasses on our head with a whistle, high-fiving people. Or it's a basketball game, we're in a suit on the edge of the bench. Or, it's at the sports banquet when they call us up and, hey, Coach Harper, come up. You get your ring and you get your plaque. But they don't see us at 4:15 when we get up in the morning and we're, getting in the shower and getting our stuff together for work, and we're outside putting out cones, and we go home, sweat and sand and dirt all over us, and snot and any other thing, as these guys are training. People don't see that. And so I think it's important for us, for people to see that part of our jobs and understand that it's more than just, let's look at the highs and let's look at the lows and let's look at the whole entire story. Because when you see the glory and you also know the story, it makes you truly understand what people have had to overcome to get to that position, to get to where they are, and, to get all those accolades, and, to be able to have, people say all those nice words about you. There's a lot of hard, ugly stuff that you got to go through to get there. That's important to know, because if people just see, you standing up there on the podium, they'll think it's easy. They'll think it's easy. And are there certain things that are easy? Yeah, but most of the time, being successful, a lot of times it can be lonely, because you're going to have to choose to make a choice and make a decision that may not be popular. And it may mean that you have to be alone, or you may have to run extra, or for me, like getting here a little bit earlier in the morning so I can finish my programs. So when I'm out coaching, I don't have to, or answer that email or make a phone call. A lot of people don't see that, but that's part of what it takes to be successful. It takes what it takes.
Do you think people know the story behind your glory? In your community, do they know?
Some people do. Some people do. Some people know, because at several points in my career, when my career was kind of trending upward, I kind of made a decision to do what was right for my family. So when my father passed away, I was, I don't know, early 20s, and, I was getting 1AA head strength coach offers, and, I probably was going to take that. And then the next thing was a group of 5 job and a power 5 job. But my dad died, and it was one afternoon I called and I couldn't get my mom, I couldn't get my sister, and my mom got sick. And I can remember just like yesterday, like, yeah, this is great, but I only got one mom. So what I did was I left and went to a high school. And I can remember, like yesterday, some people say, well, Coach, I hope you enjoyed it while it lasts, but you'll never be a college coach again. And I was okay with that. But I would usually come back with is, you don't know what God has planned for me. I may be a college coach, maybe a high school coach, but whatever I'm doing, I'm going to do the best that I can. And so when I made that decision, I didn't regret it. And I was fortunate and blessed. And I got another opportunity to be a college coach again. And the second time that I stepped down and went to, I was at UNC Chapel Hill and my sister passed away. Again, it was at the point where I was getting some opportunities to be a head strength coach again, and my sister passed away, and I just kind of put that on hold. And I remember one day she was at the hospital, and no, she was at home and sick. And my mom called, again, me being a leader, she called and your sister doesn't feel well. Okay. She don't want to go to the hospital. Okay. Well, why don't you just take her? She won't go. Okay. So I show up and now it's like, okay, well, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be at work? I was like, well, Mama said you wouldn't go to the hospital, so I guess I got to take you. So I had to take them. Well, you gonna get fired. I was like, well, if I do, then I'll be okay. I can find another job, but I can't find another sister. So when that happened with her, this is my second time working at Winston-Salem State. I actually came back to work here the first time after my sister passed away. And what I know now was the beginnings of the dementia from my mom. I thought it was just her having a hard time when my sister passing away. Now I know it was the beginnings of the dementia. So I left UNC Chapel Hill and I came here and same thing. Coach, you'll never, that was your shot. You'll never, okay. All right. Been through this before. Well, that's okay. I was just working with the same state, but then another job opportunity came about. And the last part of that, I guess part of my journey was when I decided that to take on that role of being a single father, it doesn't match real well with being a college coach because you move a lot. And since my children spend most of their time with me, I had to make another decision. And so I left that college job and I went to the high school again. And I stayed there for almost 9 years, which is the longest that I've ever stayed at any job and the longest that we've ever lived anywhere. And I don't have any regrets. So a lot of people that do know me, they do know that part of my story that I'm gonna, if it's a choice or decision between me and my career or my family, I'm making that choice for my family, and it has gone well for me. Like I said, you can make plans, but God decides your purpose, and divine provision follows your purpose. And one of the pastors here in town, he talked about that. That was his New Year's message. You can make plans, but God decides your purpose. And so that divine provision has been, different job opportunities. Me being able to make a little bit more money. Me being able to do what I needed to take care of my mom and take care of my sister when I needed to. And a lot of people do that. They do know that about me. They do know that I've turned down different opportunities. And, maybe they would have went well. Maybe they wouldn't have gone well. Maybe, that rejection was protection. Maybe that was God protecting me and making sure that I was going to be where I needed to be doing what I needed to do. And I never, I guess I never really dwelled on it, except for the first high school I worked at after I left the University of Illinois. And I'll never forget, we were playing a playoff. No, it was the last game of the season. If we won, we could go to the playoffs. And it was on the coast of North Carolina. It was cold. I don't know. It maybe was 50 people in the stands. Maybe. We weren't very good. They weren't very good. But if we won, we could have went to the playoffs. And I can remember the head coach, Coach Fletcher, he said, Coach, you go get the guys and warm them up. And first time I ever did it that whole year, I walked around the corner and I looked up in the stands. And the last time that I had looked up in the stands, it was at the University of Illinois. And I think the stadium at that point was holding like 75,000 people. And it's 75,000 people and they're screaming and it's the band. And I'm at White Oak High School and I'm not sure exactly where it is in North Carolina. And it's maybe 100 people in the stands and we're bad and they're bad. And that was kind of like a moment of clarity. And I said, okay, I'm not, Toto, I'm not in Kansas. I'm not in Kansas. This is different. And that was kind of like the moment that I embraced it and I leaned into it. And I didn't go into it like, man, I can't believe I'm a high school coach. It was everything like, man, it's pretty cool. I'm a high school coach. Get to play music and wear shorts, and I make the same thing as the math teacher. You know, that's pretty awesome. It's a pretty awesome gig. And I think for me, a lot of people, a lot of people that know me or know of me know that because of those choices and those decisions I've made. Or maybe they called me about a job and I told them, man, I can't do it because of my mom and my sister and the kids. And usually the response is, Coach, I got a lot of respect for you because I don't know anybody else that I've called and talked to that I've offered this or I would offer this job to that would make that decision. But I tell people, you know, the thing that about my mom and about my sister and about my dad is, you know, when you pass away and, you know, however it goes, you know, all of those accolades and how much money you've made, you know, that stuff's not going to be important. It's going to be important to those people, you know, the life that you led, you know, what kind of person were you? What kind of son were you? What kind of father were you? What kind of husband were you? That's what's going to be important. And so for all those people that stand up and say all those great things about you, it's going to matter the most to them. And I also tell them, you know, I've never seen an armored truck behind a hearse. So regardless of what you make or what you have, somebody else is going to have it. You know, when you leave, you come with nothing, you leave with nothing. And so I never like sat back and just thought about, dang, man, I had this opportunity. I felt like I was fortunate and blessed to get those opportunities. And if it's gonna work out and if it's gonna materialize again, it'll happen. It'll happen. But if we approach life always looking at the next opportunity instead of focusing on what we should be focusing on, then you're gonna have issues. And so because I chose to focus on my family and put myself second, I would say I've probably gotten, I don't know, at least 3 times more opportunities because people kind of know what I'm about. They know what I'm about. They know you know, of course, I'm about working hard and doing what I'm supposed to, but, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to take care of the people that depend on me the most.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Story Behind the Glory. Stay up to date with On3 for our latest episodes by following On3 on social media at On3 Stories.